For the Twist hand spinning exhibition, I was challenged to spin a yarn based on a story. I decided to spin the first 15 minutes of Star Wars. This is a corespun yarn, so this is my core. It's a 2-ply, and I spun maybe a yard of it as a leader. Of course, Star Wars starts off with black and then stars. So there's a shiny thread with sparkly beads to represent the stars. And there's a screen crawl with words that are in light yellow. So there we go, stars and light yellow. So there's the screen crawl. I spun quite a bit of that. Okay, we get to the end of the screen crawl, and then the camera pans down. We see 1, 2 moons, and then we see the limb of Tatooine, and then we see the space battle between the starships. The Rebel blockade runner has a cluster of engines on the back, and so that's what these beads are representing, the back end of the blockade runner. And we have red and green laser bolts going back and forth. And then all this light gray here is representing the big Star Destroyer. And the Star Destroyer has 3 big engines on the back, so I represented those with 3 big sequins. And then the Star Destroyer lands a hit on the blockade runner, and we have an explosion. Inside, the spaceship is very white and shiny, so silk, very, very white. We meet R2-D2 and C-3PO for the first time, and you'll see on R2-D2 I have a tiny blue bead, and on C-3PO he has a silver leg, so I have 3 gold and 1 silver. And these 2 motifs will repeat in this yarn. We have the rebels lining up. There is a big explosion as the door is destroyed. In come stormtroopers, the battle starts, lots of laser blasts. There's a moment in the battle where R2-D2 and C-3PO have to sneak across a corridor, and there's a little blast just as they get across the corridor. So that was that part. We cut back, and there's Darth Vader coming on board the ship with his stormtroopers surveying what's happening. Then we go to a darker part of the ship, and we see Princess Leia. And she is giving something to R2-D2, giving R2-D2 the message. And then we see C-3PO looking for R2-D2. Back elsewhere on the ship, we have stormtroopers. They've captured a bunch of rebels. We have the moment with Lord Vader strangling the captain of the ship. Then we have stormtroopers looking through the ship. They get to that dark part of the ship where Princess Leia is hiding. She fires 1 laser blast, and then they capture Leia with the stun gun. So there's Leia being stunned. In another part of the ship, there's a little blast which convinces C-3PO to get into the escape pod with R2-D2. So we have R2-D2 and C-3PO in the escape pod, and they blast off into space. They see the ship at a distance, and they head toward Tatooine. Back on board the ship, more stormtroopers. There's Princess Leia as she's being brought to Darth Vader. The black bead represents one of the Imperials that he's talking to. And then he walks down the corridor, again with an Imperial talking about things. And he talks to another Imperial who says that an escape pod was jettisoned during the fighting. So then we get off the ship. Now we're on Tatooine. And of course we have our fearless droids out in the middle of the desert, and they decide to split up. So we have the droids in the middle of the desert. C-3PO goes off in one direction, and there's a moment where he's standing next to a big skeleton, and he sees the sandcrawler in the distance. And then, of course, there's the other part with R2-D2, so he ends up in a rocky canyon and doesn't realize there are Jawas. So here's the little Jawas with two little gold beads inside for eyes. So there are Jawas, and they zap R2-D2. He gets caught in the electricity, so I've used a light blue, very shiny thread to represent that. And the Jawas take R2-D2 to the sandcrawler. So there's the Jawas and the rocks. And then they get inside the sandcrawler, and there are other droids in the sandcrawler, which are what some of these little beads are representing. And then R2-D2 and C-3PO meet up again in the sandcrawler. So that's inside the sandcrawler with that sort of rusty colored yarn. And then back outside on Tatooine, we have stormtroopers again on dewbacks. So we actually have stormtroopers on dewbacks. And one of them finds a strange looking piece and says, "Look, sir, droids." And then I'm back to my leader at the other end. If it's at the end, is it a follower rather than a leader? So there you are. That is how I represented the first 15 minutes of Star Wars in yarn.